Welcome to The Main Perspective, Episode 7 of the podcast series, Trust Across Race and Culture, The Pandemic Impact. Dialogue with 4 fascinating millennials. No justice, no peace. I'm your host, Regina Wharton. Let me introduce our speakers. Rebecca Cannon, Assistant Public Defender. Jaya Daniel, UNC Chapel Hill, Class of 2020, and National Council of Negro Women. Charles Hands, Attorney at Law, Hands Law Firm, and David Jessup, DigiBridge founder and Miami Law, Class of 2022. Let's get right into it. I want to know what makes you feel connected to the No Justice, No Peace movement. Rebecca, let's start with you.
So what connects me most to the No Justice, No Peace movement is because I'm able to actually see what that looks like when we're out there protesting in the streets, as well as the impact that it's having on the country in the courtroom when it comes to when I'm representing my clients. When we're actually out there protesting in the streets and we're saying no justice, no peace, we normally follow it by saying no racist police, right? And so that is the way the Black Lives Matter movement started, right? It's a stand against police brutality, against Black, brown people, poor people. And I think when we're out there, when people say no justice, no peace, what we're saying is that, this is a time where we're coming forward, saying that we're no longer going to stand and accept what we've been given. We would like a seat at the table, right? We would like the opportunity to be treated as though our lives matter. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stated that there will be neither rest nor tranquility until the Negro is granted citizenship. And so I think the same applies. That no peace part says there will be no rest, no tranquility in America until we are treated as our lives matter. So that's what connects me to the movement. Personally, as an African-American female, and also as someone who represents poor Black and brown people on a day-to-day basis.
So how does it make you feel when you're out there?
There are lots of feelings that go through you. I know I'm generally surrounded with a lot of people. We've had people of all different types of races, backgrounds, coming forward and marching and saying this. And so the feeling that it makes me feel proud. Like we're standing together. I think everybody really understands what that means, right? When they say no justice, no peace, because a lot of people have had personal instances where they felt like, they have not received justice. And so to be out there, to have our voices heard, that is a very powerful feeling. It's our First Amendment right, freedom of speech and freedom to gather. And so to be out there, to be able to take a stand and say such powerful words, it's a great feeling. But I think that when we're out there, we also have to come to the table as well to actually list out our demands, list out the things that we actually want to see changed in our cities, in our states, and all around the world.
Appreciate you opening up the dialogue and the conversation. Jaya, jump in.
Absolutely.
How are you connected to the no justice, no peace
For
movement?
me, I feel most connected. Definitely, technology has helped with it. Social media a lot too. I can't physically be out there, protesting because the climate we're in, COVID-19. I live with two immunocompromised people, so I have to be very careful stepping out the house at any moment. So for me, social media has really played a huge part in me feeling connected to it since I can't physically be there. Signing petitions, spreading the word, getting stories out there, helping any way I can from inside the house. So social media has been a huge part. And also just a sense of community. Speaking with Black people just that I know through our phones, seeing how they feel, making sure checking in on them and having them check in on me because this is a hard time just mentally, emotionally. So that's definitely also helped me stay connected with my friends, with people outside of my house and the Black community too.
So, Charles, you heard Jaya mention social media, and I was hoping I knew that would come up with you all, of course. How has that amplified the hashtag BLM movement?
It just is another medium. It's a new medium that's more rapid, in my opinion, than traditional media, where it's like wildfire, and people can just search a hashtag. They can look at their friends on their social media and quickly, instantly see what's going on, as opposed to, oh, let's wait till the 6 o'clock news and see what's on the world news. They can see exactly instantly what's going on.
Are you saying like I do? Like I wait for the 6 o'clock?
Hey,
I have the news on all day, but yes, I do wait for.
Hey, so Rebecca, could you give the Martin Luther King quote again?
Yes, there will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted citizenship. Yeah.
Yeah, that just, so to the no justice, no peace, with that quote, it really resonated with me because I think the no peace it starts inherently, like internal. If I'm not having justice, if I'm not seeing things done right with myself or with people in my community, internally there's no peace. And then a lot of people then will outwardly manifest that, where it could be through different things depending on the person. So yeah, where there's no justice, there's not going to be peace, and it starts inside with individual people that are suffering from injustice. And so I just wanted to add that with the no justice, no peace comment.
David, as you listen, pick up on either side or both, if you like, the no justice, no peace movement, as well as how social media is playing a significant role.
Sure. I was getting hung up on this idea of how I felt connected, started taking some notes, how I felt connected to the movement. And as a white male of privilege, I have to say, I don't necessarily feel connected. I feel responsible. I feel obligated. I believe that it is my obligation to society, to my peers who are at this virtual table today. It's my obligation to stand up and to speak out against the injustices that we're seeing.
So I do want to really pick up on the social media piece, because I want you all to help us, help the audience, help the listeners understand how significant social media is today and how it's playing out today, especially with the movement. So David, say more.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great that's coming from social media, especially when we think about organizing. Digital organizing and advocacy can be very powerful, as we've seen. However, it requires each of us to be diligent. It requires each of us to be critical of what we're consuming, because the algorithms can work to make us feel comfortable by sharing media that reaffirms our beliefs if we aren't thoughtful about the ways in which we seek out information. But overall, I think that the various digital platforms have amplified the movement, and they have allowed well-intentioned white people. I'll speak for well-intentioned white people who maybe, have a Black friend to understand a bit more deeply what's going on and how they can move thoughtfully within this space during this time to enact or to help with the types of changes to help create the type of change that we need to see in this country right now.
And are you all using social media in different ways? So are you using, obviously, LinkedIn maybe for your professional, and you're using Twitter for something else? Help us to understand that as well. Bring us up to date. Jaya, how about you?
I'm sorry, my connection just went out. Could you repeat what you said?
No problem. I was just saying that I want you all to bring us up to date on how you are using social media, because what I find is it's hard to keep up. It's hard to keep up with my LinkedIn. It's hard to keep up with Facebook, Instagram. I think I'm driving myself crazy trying to do all of that. But so help me help others. How are we current today?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I do it is I kind of have, I've separated it. So I have certain social media platforms that I use socially, and then I have some that I use to learn and to get information. And so that kind of helps me separate it so that I'm not continuously bogged down by all of these different, negative stories or things that can possibly affect my mental health. And I can take a break and I can go and do, see something else. So for example, I use my Twitter for things to learn and to see what other people are saying about the world. Like that's where I see my news every day when I log on. Whereas my Instagram, I'll use that for usually social reasons. And, kind of you mentioned keeping up. It's easier for me to keep up on Twitter, but it's also important to know that, you don't always have to keep up. Sometimes it's best that you don't, because the way that social media is today, you're exposed to a lot of information at one time. It's unprecedented how much we're exposed to at one time. And I don't necessarily think that the way that we're set up, we're necessarily supposed to be exposed to all that. It can be very detrimental to our mental health and to our psyche if we take on too much at one time.
And Jay, you made a really good point. Like, it's really good to take a break from social media. I'm a strong advocate for that. I believe that taking a break, taking a step back is so important, especially in this type of climate. We're dealing with a global pandemic, COVID-19, right? And a lot of us are working from home. We're staying at home. So we have our phones on us all day. We're checking our work emails, and we're also checking social media, and we're being flooded with all this information. But I think what people forget is that being a person of color or being a person that's impacted by everything going on in the world with the Black Lives Matter movement, and coupling that with COVID-19, it's really, really important to stress to people how to take care of your mental health during this time. So I'm really glad that you said take a break and take a step back, because I think it's really, really important for our people to do that.
And I want to...
Go ahead, Charles. Sorry.
I was going to...
Charles.
I just wanted to call out Generation X and baby boomers, because millennials get the rap for being all on social media and on the phones. And I sometimes go months without being on social media just to be unplugged. But every time I see Generation Xers and sometimes baby boomers, they're the stereotypical millennial on the phones and plugged in, but then we have to take the rap for it. So I just wanted to make sure that was expressed about social media.
Go ahead, David. You had a comment.
Yeah, just to Rebecca's point, it's important for me to call in and my white friends who are listening, taking a step back or, protecting your energy is incredibly important for Black and brown folks right now. But this is our time as white people in America to step forward and to carry the burdens that we know have for far too long been handed off. So I just want to make sure that everyone didn't hear it's time to take a step back. Rebecca, Charles, Jaya have been dealing with these challenges all of their life. And it's now time for people like myself to carry this weight and to support the solutions, the enactment of the solutions that we know are needed.
So let's talk more about that, because there is a lot of dialogue going on social media. If I still stick with that, it is a great place to learn. So literally, you can go out there and you can pick a topic and you can dive deeply into it. And it also can be very overwhelming to do that. So what are some of the messages out there in terms of across race and culture? Because David, you raise a really good point. You're saying, okay, wait, the messages for white people may be different from the messages for people of color. How are you paying attention? How are you all paying attention to that? Are you having those conversations on social media, out of social media? How are you connecting?
Hey, I connect.
Charles, how about you?
Yeah, I'm intentional with the perspectives and things that I'm seeing. If I open up my Instagram right now, Facebook is going to be pro-democratic, pro-black, arrest the cops that killed Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. I'm seeing that one view. And I think it's a mark of a wise person to see all narratives, even if you disagree. So I intentionally might look at what Fox News is saying or what some of my old classmates from high school that do not have those views are saying, because then it gives me the full picture to advocate more for my views.
Absolutely.
How about you, Rebecca?
I agree with Charles. When I log into my social media, I am flooded with information with people that share similar views than I do. But I do think it's important to see it from everyone's point of view. I think it's really even more important to be strategic, right? So I ask myself, like, when I get on social media, what am I doing? So if I'm researching, if I'm looking for information, I want to make sure that it's a credible site, it's a credible source. They're reporting things that are true. A lot of times, talking about fake news, Instagram, Twitter, those are breeding grounds for fake news. People can post anything, and if they have a large amount of followers, that message or that narrative is shared amongst a lot of people. So what I try to do is be very intentional. I ask myself, okay, what is my purpose? And so lately my purpose, as it relates to social media, is to put awareness out about things we're doing in Charlotte. So I've been sharing different protests that we're having. I know earlier, before the Black Lives Matter marches really started, we were protesting in Mecklenburg County, and we were a group, grassroots, called Decarcerate Mecklenburg, right? Due to COVID being in the jail. So I use my social media to promote things like that, and not so much take in a lot of the narratives. I'd rather have conversations with people out in public instead of someone that, may want to just spew hate or just tell me that they have different views in a not so professional or respectful way. I think that's a waste of my time personally. So I try to kind of step back from those conversations. And I think it's really, really important to let other people have those conversations, because I think when you're out doing the work, sometimes you don't want to get distracted by social media. You want to be able to go up there, share your message, reach people, and then kind of just step away and not kind of get engaged with people who have different views. I don't think that is the platform. It is nice to have a conversation for those that want to, but that is not always what we're met with, especially during this climate when people have really, really strong views that are often opposite of each other.
So I'm wondering how you then advocate for social justice. So how are you doing that, Jaya? How are you advocating for social justice?
Definitely taking a second to take into account my privilege. Even though I am a Black woman, there are still different privileges that I have within the Black community. And it's so important to recognize those for myself so that I can elevate platforms for people who are further marginalized than I am myself. So yes, I'm a Black woman, but I have privilege through my class. I have privilege through my religion. I'm able-bodied. There are different things. I'm skinny. There are different things that I still have privilege under. And it's very important to make sure that people who don't have those same privileges have a voice. And because of the way that I look or the way that I present myself, people may listen to me more than they will listen to those people. The way I fight for social justice is to make sure that I'm using my voice to amplify the problems or the issues in communities that I'm not necessarily in.
David, for you?
So I really try to practice calling in versus calling out. I do have a pretty diverse audience on Facebook, especially. Like Charles said, some of those folks you went to high school with. And most recently, I was kind of surprised by people's reaction to the burning of a building. I don't remember if it was a CVS or a Target. I think it might have been a Target. And as a member of the LGBTQ community, I understand what happened during the Stonewall riots. Not comparing that to what is transpiring today, but there are some parallels. And so I felt really compelled to say something on Facebook, which ultimately ended up being sort of a public share of my cell phone number and the opportunity to speak with those who didn't understand why this building was on fire. I shared that, the call would be made. You could make the call anonymously, and we could have a discussion, a balanced discussion. And I was pleased to speak with 3 people, one of whom I don't know. Well, actually, I might know who it is. I think we might have gone to high school together, but spoke with 3 people who were completely baffled that this building was burning down and didn't see the action in the same way that I did. And so that opportunity to have that dialogue, at least that starting point, was a way to bring someone to a different viewpoint. If I had just sort of posted something or responded to a comment that said, why is this rioting happening, this looting, happening, it may have been, an unfriend or an unfollow. And so I wanted to create the space to have a conversation because it was important for me to understand why they were so outraged by the building, but not by the death of this Black man. And so I've tried to use my platforms to call people in more often than not lately.
So I'm really struck by hiding behind social media. That's just me calling it that. You all may have a different view.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah, you can say what you want there, but you may not do the same thing in the presence of someone. And you're all nodding your heads. Our listeners can't see that, but you're all nodding your heads. Why? Why are you nodding your heads about it?
That's called a social media troll, someone who says things and hides behind social media. I think on Twitter, like with Twitter fingers.
Twitter fingers.
Yeah, like that was in a big rap song.
Oh, I like that.
Okay, like what are you doing in real life? Do you advocate this out loud, or are you just someone hiding behind a computer screen?
And to kind of touch on David's point, like I want to thank you and we appreciate you for taking the time out of your day to have these conversations with people where people like myself, I just do not have the capacity to have those tough conversations. I will block you. But I think the reality of it is that people do need to have these conversations with people. And some people, kind of like what Charles was saying, like they're trolls. They don't really want to understand. They don't really want to learn what it's about. And there are other platforms to learn about what the BLM movement actually means, what it stands for, what it means when we are saying defund the police, things like that. There are outlets, there are articles about what that means. And so personally, I don't feel like everyone is always equipped to handle that, whether it's emotionally, mentally, or just if you just don't want to, you should not, feel like you need to. But thank you, David, for just taking the time to have those conversations with people. And I hope it made a difference in their life, at least let them I hope they took the opportunity to actually listen to what you were saying.
So this is a whole new world order around engaging people in a dialogue. Do you call it a dialogue on social media, Jaya?
That's a tough one. I would say so, yes. I think that I can speak for Twitter specifically. I feel like on Instagram or other platforms, it's less of a dialogue because it's a little bit harder to kind of see all the different things that people are saying and to reply to them. But Twitter makes it a lot easier for someone to say something and for a lot of people to chime in with their opinions. So if we're speaking about social media in that facet, it's definitely a dialogue that people can have, where people can learn and people can admit where they aren't necessarily educated on a certain topic and ask for more education.
That's good. That's good. You're helping me. How about that? What do you want to say around bold change? So if you were in a position of power, how would you use it to make bold change? What needs to change? We have all these different messages floating out there. Some of them pretty strong, some of them less. What needs to change? How do we make this future brighter?
I think
who wants? Go ahead, Rebecca.
I think just in short, we have to end systemic racism, right? It is.
And how do we do that?
Racism is embedded in a lot of different platforms. Every platform, exactly.
Say it.
And I think me personally, I think that where we should start is the Constitution, right? Because the Constitution was not written for Black and brown people. We were not free. We were treated and regarded as property. And so I still think that, until we have to, if we're going to go by the Constitution, if that's going to be the law that we follow, that it needs to be rewritten to include us so that we're not excluded, right? And so that is a huge start. But we also need new laws, like on a federal level, on a state level. We need new policies. We can address systemic racism with our county and city budgets, right? We can talk about how it impacts how much money is going to the police in our community, how much money is going into housing, into the healthcare, into our school systems. So we like David said, it's really, racism is embedded in every platform, and there's literally we can do something in every area, but I think if I could do something today, where I would start would be the Constitution.
On with the Constitution.
Yes.
Charles, how about you?
Well, first, a formal apology to Black people needs to be made by the United States government. They've made it for the Japanese Americans when they put them in detention camps. Germany made it for the Jews, where that's just putting in black ink. We formally apologize for the injustices we have done against X, against you, against the Jewish people for what we did here, against the Japanese Americans for putting you in containment camps. Second, after a formal apology, is economic empowerment, which Asheville, North Carolina took a bold step towards with a reparations through a city council resolution where, okay, we had all these injustices right here in Asheville, North Carolina. We need to help Black Americans have economic empowerment through housing, through finances, et cetera, because when you uplift people economically, that bleeds into all the other areas, such as crime, such as health. When you're economically empowered, you're now more on a level playing field to play in the world of capitalism that America has.
It starts with an apology. Interesting. Jaya, what are you doing?
So from my understanding is the very foundation of what we built this country on. The foundation it was built off of the human trafficking of Black bodies. There's no way around it. Like, that's what the country was built off of. Every single facet, every single system that grew from slavery, that grew from the foundation of this country, it reeks of racism. There's every single one. Everything has to be scrapped. It's almost as we have to start all over, because there's no way for us to continue to go on if we don't assess every single system that exists and start all over. And then we talk about, getting rid of the systemic racism. Personally, I feel like along with systemic racism, you also have to kind of address capitalism too. They go hand in hand. We can never be free under a system of capitalism. The system that allowed for the human trafficking of bodies, the murder, the rape, the annihilation of all of the different communities, just for labor, just for a profit. If we're still under that system, Black bodies can never be free, because there will always be somebody at the bottom of that system for this country to make money. So if we're going to ever be free from the different things that oppress us, we have to kind of start from the very beginning and scrap everything to start over.
Start over. David, what are you doing?
I mean, I'm listening, and everything that my peers just shared is exactly what needs to happen. I think that we are making progress right now. It's rather performative. Charles, I am waiting on Congress with you, and have taken my own actions to hopefully move our legislators in that direction. But once the performances end, once the paint dries on the streets and the statues are taken down, we are going to have to make sure that people who look like me are ready to pony up. And that is going to be the challenge that I know myself and other allies are preparing for. Because I think a lot of white people are comfortable with the idea of equality right now, right? Equal access. But when we talk about equity and we talk about one house needing a little more water because it's on fire, or one school needing a bit more tax dollar because the children who attend the school are from a lower income neighborhood, that's when people start to get uncomfortable. And so when we start to think about equity and the redistribution of wealth, and putting Black and brown people in positions of power, that's when folks really start to get uncomfortable. And Charlotte, North Carolina is a pretty good example. I run in a circle. When I'm in Charlotte, I run with white folks, and I run with Black and brown folks. And as the city leadership started to look a bit more diverse, and as leadership in the city and the county moved in a direction where white men weren't in power, you started hearing all these rumblings. I did, at least from some of my white friends and mentors, that, this leader is promoting his friends, and that leader, she's picking her friends. I'm not using names. She's picking her friends for that board. And, my response is, this is what we've been doing for 400 years. White people have been doing this for all of time. And so what it's going to look like is white people getting uncomfortable with people who don't look like us being in power and leading us forward, because clearly we haven't figured out how to do it.
Great perspective from all of you. So we recently lost a civil rights champion with Mr. John Lewis. I want to read a quote of his and then have you all respond. Every generation leaves behind a legacy. What that legacy will be is determined by the people of that generation. What legacy do you want to leave behind? Charles?
I want to leave a legacy of not being confined in the lines people draw around you, the boxes people give you, of transcending. Whatever that is different for everyone, but I personally believe that many people, they're born, they go through a path, and people just try to put you in a box. So for me, I was good at math and science in school. Oh, you should be a scientist or a doctor. Well, what if I wanted to do this? Or if I was exposed to something else, I could do this. And I'm from Wilmington, North Carolina, and just being a symbol for other Black men there, hey, there's more possible than what they drew for us as far as in school or the lines that were given. So to just be a symbol to the masses of people of transcend above your circumstances to, really have a huge impact on the world.
Jaya?
I want to leave a legacy of inclusivity. For every movement that there is a group within the marginalized community that's fighting for equality or equity, there's a group within there that feels left out, that feels like their voices aren't being heard. Even with the civil rights movement that we had in the 60s, it was amazing. It did what it needed to do. But there were still communities within the Black community that still were like, well, nobody fought for us, or our voices weren't heard. So this time around, I want to make sure that, when this generation leaves its legacy, everyone had a voice, everyone had a platform. We were able to speak for everybody. When they talk about us decades from now, centuries from now, they say that we made sure that every voice was heard. Everybody had a platform. And so that's the legacy I definitely hope that we leave behind.
David?
Wow, those are hard acts to follow. I think I want people to say that I was relentless. If someone stands and says that my legacy, that I was a pain in the ass, I'll be okay with that, as long as it's followed up with, a hard worker who was a champion for all and contributed to the community.
Rebecca?
Yes, my favorite quote, I love quotes. You guys may know this by now, but my favorite quote from John Lewis. And actually, I love the quote when I heard it a while back, but just recently, friends and family, before John Lewis passing, they've been sending me this quote. And I was like, wait, that's my quote. And it goes, "Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble." That's what I want my legacy to be, right? Because as a public defender, I represent poor Black and brown people day in and day out. And a lot of my clients don't feel as though that they have a voice. So I have to make noise. I'm an extension of my client in the courtroom. So if my client is looked at as a bad person, sometimes I am too. But my job in the courtroom, in that position, is to be a voice for my client, and to stand up for what's right, stand up for what is just. And so what I want my legacy to be is I want people to look back and say, she stood up for people who felt like they did not have a voice, for people that were impacted by the way that this country chooses to treat Black, brown, and poor people. And so I want people to be able to say, wait, she didn't do what everyone else did, or she didn't always play it safe, but she made sure she did what she needed to do to be able to stand with her clients, to help them have a voice, to let them, to give them a platform to tell their story and their experiences. So I just want people to know that sometimes the work is not easy. It's tiring, but at the end of the day, I think if your intent is pure, the impact will be that. And so I think it's really, really important to make sure that we're standing up for those who feel like they don't have the voice or that people aren't listening to them.
Thank you to our listeners. Thank you to Rebecca, Jaya, Charles, and David for sharing your thoughts and perspectives with us. Please join us next week to continue our discussion on trust across race and culture as we discuss what we learned and the key themes that we will take away. Sponsored by The Main Event.